And then there's two stories that I think are about the same thing. One is based in this country, and one is very much American. But I think, and my job is to keep them separate, because I wouldn't mind doing an hour on each, actually. But of course, if I fail to keep them separate and they merge into one, then we might struggle to do 2 hours on this. But there's a story in the UK that shows us 1 in 5 adults aged between 18 to 45 would prefer a despot to a democracy. The answer to the question, the best system for running a country effectively is a strong leader who doesn't have to bother with elections. And the age breakdown is what fascinates me most, because it is the so-called Generation Z, born in 1997, and millennials born in 1981, who are most seduced by the idea that the best system for running a country effectively is a strong leader who doesn't have to bother with elections. Which takes us, I think, inevitably to matters American, where the special counsel investigating Donald Trump's conduct in the context of the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election has published some of his findings. The overarching one being that he believes, Jack Smith, the special counsel, believes that Trump would have been convicted of illegally trying to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election, which he lost, if he had not successfully been re-elected in 2024. Now, you'll be aware of a lot of the evidence, and it is, of course, evidence with which we should be concerning ourselves, unfashionable though that may be. Some of the language he used when the mob was gathering, telling them to fight and that they would lose their country if they didn't fight. The knowingly false claims of election fraud. It would be, in the context of sanity, it would be impossible for Donald Trump to have believed an awful lot of things that he was claiming. He stands accused of unprecedented efforts to unlawfully retain power through a variety of methods, including threats and encouragement of violence against his perceived opponents. And that's where things get Orwellian. That's where things get, I don't even know what the word is anymore. Orwellian seems a little bit lazy, seems a little bit pat, doesn't it? Where people are denying the evidence of their own eyes and ears. You heard what he said to the mob. You saw what the mob did. You saw where they went. You saw what unfolded next. And yet some people, encouraged by Donald Trump, do not believe what they saw. Do you remember in the really early days, people were claiming that the mob had been infiltrated by anti-Trump operatives, anti-Trump activists, anti-fascist protesters, and that they were sort of attacking police officers and trying to break into the Capitol in order to make Trump look bad, as opposed to listening to the content of the speeches that he was giving at that time and just seeing night follow day, inevitably. The report also details significant challenges faced by investigators, including, and this is very much the language of despotism, his ability and willingness to use his influence and following on social media to target witnesses, courts, and Department of Justice employees. They also explained that there's no point carrying on with the prosecution because the US Constitution explicitly forbids the prosecution of a sitting president, concluding, but for Mr. Trump's election in 2024 and imminent return to the presidency, the office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. Donald Trump, I haven't checked, will be calling it fake news and claiming that Jack Smith is, I don't know, in the pocket of Big Pharma. I don't know. Who's he blaming it on today? Or Joe Biden's secret love child? Or possibly, I don't know, Hillary Clinton's long-lost cousin? I don't, he'll just be telling you to ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. Letter that Smith has written to accompany the case states, the claim from Mr. Trump that my decisions as a prosecutor were influenced or directed by the Biden administration or other political actors is, in a word, laughable. While we were not able to bring the cases we charged to trial, I believe the fact that our team stood up for the rule of law matters. 137 pages sent to Congress after midnight on Tuesday, American time, and it was there were desperate attempts to keep it secret, to keep it locked away, but a judge cleared the way for the first part of the report to be released. And I need you sometimes just to kind of listen, or not listen's not quite the right word. I need, what they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. Because I don't know what we do, really. I have a sense that when you stop pointing out that people are ignoring the evidence of their own eyes and ears, when you stop doing it, then things can only get worse, can't they? You sort of think, I can't be bothered anymore. Maybe I don't know, go back to being a video games journalist. I'm joking. But I just feel that we're coming to the same stories in some ways from slightly different angles almost all the time. Not so much domestically yet, but we seem to be heading in that direction. The latest poll has Farage's outfit beating the Conservatives and snapping at the Labour Party's heels, despite them standing for nothing really, except being a little bit more unpleasant about immigration than we are already. That's put the Tories in an impossible hole. Looking at the state of the British media, it's an absolute miracle that the Labour Party is still top in the polls, but don't expect that to be pointed out anywhere where you were encouraged to vote for austerity, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Brexit, all the other catastrophic episodes that have brought this country to the mess that it's in today, that all of the people responsible, of course, are desperately trying to blame on the Labour government. But that's by the by. That's Populism 101. This is Populism 2.0. Because what we do, and I use the word we advisedly, let me just check to demonstrate that not everybody listening will be of the view that democracy is important. Here you go, Peter's here. So, as usual, Mr. O'Brien, you're taking what Mr. Smith from the Justice Department has said about Trump without any due diligence or basic journalism. I've seen so much contrary evidence allegedly showing that it was an actual government conspiracy to demonize Trump, but such is your disdain for Trump, you and your station push out any negative information. So Peter's done his research. He's found evidence on the internet that shows that when Donald Trump made a speech encouraging people to attack the Capitol, he was actually secretly working for Joe Biden's campaign team and encouraging people to attack his own vice president because that would actually help his... But I don't know. But Peter's real and he's allowed to use scissors. So these people exist. There's what, three categories, I suppose. There are people who believe the alternative facts. People who watched Kellyanne Conway a few years ago now explain that these weren't lies. These weren't lies. They might involve ignoring the evidence of your own eyes and ears, but these are alternative facts. There are facts and there are alternative facts. And people choose to believe the alternative facts, people like Peter. So, here is a bloody great elephant standing right in front of you, but Peter sees a chicken. And he is adamant that it's a chicken, and it's proof that we're all corrupt and we're all embarked upon some terrible attempt to replace white people or bring about woke universities or change everybody's milk into, I don't know. But anyway, it's a chicken. It's not an elephant. Walks like an elephant, quacks like an elephant, but for a large proportion of Donald Trump's support, it's not an elephant. I think the bloke who ended up at that pizza restaurant in New York that didn't have a basement, but which had a paedophile ring involving Hillary Clinton being run from its basement, I think he died this week. A tragic life that is. That's a story someone should tell in rather more detail than we currently have. So that's group number one. And then, there may be more than three groups, but then there's group number two, which I think I'm in, which is, and it's a weird group to be in because I presume there are subsets of this. There are people who are constantly frightened and furious about the direction of traffic in the Western world at the moment, or in the United States of America in particular. You look at this, you see despotism, you see a man prepared to lie, prepared to set raging mobs upon his own former colleagues. Just utterly, utterly corrupt, morally, politically, professionally, personally, utterly, completely. And you don't, what would the word be? You don't know why other people don't share your sensibilities. You sort of thought, didn't you, growing up, that despots were bad. We were all taught, whether you want to refer back to Franco or Mussolini or Hitler or whoever it is, we were all taught, Stalin, we were all taught they were bad, right? And that these kind of tactics, these blatant lies, were anathema. I said it before and I'll say it again. I kind of sometimes find myself wondering whether, when we were watching Star Wars in a cinema, half of the audience was actually rooting for Darth Vader without actually feeling confident enough to stand up and say so. But they're saying so now. So then you've got this second group of people who are, they're sort of divided between various levels of befuddlement, fear and anger, and clinging desperately to the notion that there is truth and there is untruth, and if you can hang on to the truth, yada, yada, you know all that. And then you've got the third group of people who don't care enough, or people who don't care at all. They're very different from the first group. The first group is full of people who you could describe as radicalised. The third group is people who are much more confusing to the second group. I can understand radicalised people. I can understand Peter doing all his own, quotes, research on the internet and ending up in a similar place to the bloke who turned up in New York looking for the basement of the pizza restaurant that didn't have a basement where Hillary Clinton was running her paedophile ring from. He did his own research on the internet as well. He thought that mainstream journalists were keeping the truth from the people. And Trump's part of that ecosystem. So you can understand how many people can end up in it when someone as powerful as Trump is creating it. Elon Musk's been shilling for Alex Jones this week, the man who lied about the sun. Nothing is sacred, is it? That's the phrase. Nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing matters. Everything is lost when lies and corruption triumph in this way. People who believe that they're not lies are in one camp. People who know that they are and despair are in the other. But then you've got the third. Category. The third category is people who don't care enough. How many people are in that group? People who care about the truth, people who believe the opposite of the truth, and then the people who don't care enough. I wonder if they, in some ways, are the most important constituency in this group of all, because they're the ones that I find most confusing. I did something terrible. I made a terrible journalistic mistake about 18 months ago. I haven't told her yet, but I'll tell you, as long as you promise not to tell her. I remember when Emily went to America, was it about 18 months ago, when she did her first sort of visit to take the temperature of the American electorate. And she came on the line from Emily Maitlis, my colleague, who of course now presents the Newsagents podcast. And I remember she came on the line, and I think the very first thing she said to me, and she's a much more informed, knowledgeable and expert chronicler of American politics than I will ever be. The first thing she said to me was the price of petrol. First thing she said to me is people are really cross about the cost of living. And that works for Trump. People feel that they're worse off than they were when Donald Trump was president, and that will be more important than anything else. And I thought, because I don't know as much about it and I wasn't there, I thought, I wonder, really, Emily? That seems unlikely given what we know. I mean, after January the 6th, after he tried to launch a coup on his own country, they still care more about the price of tea or the cost of petrol. And of course, she has been proven in some ways completely right. Her analysis was bang on then, bang on the day of the election, and it's bang on now. And maybe there's a bit of snobbery here or a little bit of being out of touch. But I don't think it is. I don't think you can say to someone who's trying to defend Western civilization as we know it, that just because they're well off, they don't really understand what it's like. And that's why I support lying, corrupt despots. I think it's a great rhetorical tool for populists to use. Well, it's all very well for you in your nice house, isn't it? Sticking up for democracy. How would you feel if you were poor? You wouldn't be a Democrat. I think I'd still believe in democracy. I'd still believe it's bad to essentially set a murderous mob on your own vice president. I'd still believe it was bad to lie through your teeth about everything. I'm pretty sure I would. And that's what I don't understand. You know, we've been here for years now. A lot of you reminding me the bankruptcies, the allegations, the self-confessed sex offending, the findings in US courts about his behaviours with women, all sorts of things. And we're still here. Why don't people care more? Why don't people care more? 0345 6060973. It becomes almost, why don't enough people care? Literally cheering back into the White House A man who I inarguably and irrefutably tried to steal it. And they're going to cheer him back in again. And I'm not sure I've got any better understanding of some of the mental machinations going on here than I had when he first decided to throw his hat into the political space. And there's the other stories that are going to disappear as well, all of the documents that he stole. That goes away now because you can't prosecute a sitting president. It's quite incredible. And the detail, whether you've been paying much attention or not, is hair-raising. You know, the big question, and I've read one article that answers it quite well, is the delays here. Why did they delay for so long to the point where the detail comes out after the election has happened? But I don't even think that matters. I think if this had come out before the election, there's a very compelling case for saying he'd have won by even more than he did. And again, which group is that? The group of people who've decided to believe things that aren't true because it comforts them, or the group of people that don't care enough because they care about other things more